Captain Elena Vasquez strode through the docking bay of Nexus Trading Station, her boots clicking against the polished floor as station personnel and aliens of various species moved about their business. At her side walked 3 crew members. Kai, her tactical officer, Dr. Reyes, the ship's physician, and Navarro, communications specialist. But it was the small carrier in Elena's hand that drew curious glances. "Captain, are you sure bringing Whisper was wise?" Navarro whispered, eyeing the small black cat who peered through the mesh of his carrier with intelligent yellow eyes. The Krillians aren't known for their ... appreciation of Earth customs. Elena's expression remained neutral, though her grip on the carrier tightened slightly. "Whisper goes where I go, Navarro. That was the arrangement when I accepted this command." The truth was simpler and more complicated. Elena couldn't explain why she felt compelled to keep the cat with her at all times. He'd been a gift from her grandmother before she passed, a woman who had spoken in cryptic warnings about guardians of the void and watchers in the dark. Elena had chalked it up to the ramblings of age, but something about Whisper's uncanny. Awareness made her wonder. As they approached the central atrium, the imposing forms of the Krillian delegation came into view. Standing nearly 8 feet tall, with iridescent exoskeletons and multiple appendages ending in precision reapers, they dominated the space physically and politically. War Chief Vexmore's mandibles clicked rapidly, the Krillian equivalent of laughter when his compound eyes fell on Whisper. "The humans bring vermin to diplomatic proceedings," he announced to his lieutenants, his translator rendering his chittering speech into standard. Perhaps they intended as emergency rations? Elena maintained her diplomatic smile. "This is Whisper, War Chief. A companion species from Earth." "Companion?" Dexmore's antennae twitched in amusement. "What purpose does it serve?" "It has no weapons, no obvious strength. Not everything's value is measured in its capacity for violence," Elena replied smoothly. "Ah." Nearby Zorvan trader leaned toward his associate. "Humans and their sentimentality. They'll domesticate anything that moves." Whisper merely yawned, showing tiny teeth before curling up in his carrier, seemingly oblivious to being the center of attention. Little did anyone know that behind those sleepy yellow eyes, complex genetic sequences lay dormant, waiting for the right chemical trigger, the specific pheromone signature of a predator that had no place on a civilized station. And in the darkness below, that very predator stirred, sensing new prey had arrived. 3 days into negotiations, Elena's patience was wearing thin. The trade route discussions had stalled, with the Krillians demanding excessive tariffs for passage through their territory. Each session began and ended with some form of mockery directed at humanity's weakness or sentimentality, with Whisper often serving as Exhibit A. "Your species wastes resources on creatures that contribute nothing," Vexmore declared during a particularly tense moment. "On Krillos, every organism serves a purpose or becomes sustenance." Elena had released Whisper from his carrier, allowing him to wander the diplomatic quarters under the watchful eyes of her crew. The cat seemed particularly interested in the ventilation systems, occasionally pawing at grates or staring intently at shadows. "I assure you, War Chief, Earth cats have served humanity for millennia," Dr. Reyes interjected, her scientific curiosity piqued. "They protected our grain stores from rodents and provided companionship." "Grain protectors?" One of the Krillian lieutenants chittered mockingly. That tiny creature wouldn't last 5 minutes against a Krillian blood mite, let alone a real predator. Whisper, seemingly oblivious to being the subject of alien ridicule, batted at a piece of lint before jumping onto a high shelf, where he curled up to nap in a patch of artificial sunlight. That evening, Elena retreated to her quarters, exhausted. "Computer, send a secure message to Admiral Chun. Negotiations proceeding slowly." Quillian cultural differences presenting significant obstacles. As she prepared for sleep, she noticed Whisper sitting alert at her door, ears pricked forward, tail twitching methodically. "What is it, boy?" she asked, kneeling beside him. "Sensing something?" The cat merely blinked slowly, but refused to move from his position. Unknown to Elena, Whisper had detected trace elements of an unfamiliar biochemical signature, deep in E to show. His feline DNA, dormant genes were beginning to activate genes engineered centuries ago when humans first encountered the horrors that lurked between stars. Meanwhile, in the maintenance tunnels 20 levels below, station worker Tremlai became the third person to disappear that month. Security logged it as another desertion common enough on frontier stations, but the truth lay in the barely visible tracks of paralytic venom that dissolved hours after contact with air. The shade stalker had fed again and was growing bolder. With each successful hunt, station administrator, Jorax, knew about the disappearances but had calculated the cost. A full evacuation and hunt would cost millions in lost revenue. Occasional missing workers were simply the price of doing business on the frontier. By the fifth day, Elena noticed Whisper's behavior changing. The normally lazy cat became increasingly vigilant, spending hours staring at ventilation ducts and pawing at seemingly random sections of flooring. His pupils remained permanently dilated, and twice she'd woken to find him prowling her quarters, moving with a deliberate precision she'd never observed before. "Something's wrong with your creature," Kai noted during breakfast as Whisper repeatedly scratched at the same corner of the room. "He seems agitated," Elena frowned. "He's been acting strange since we arrived. Maybe the station environment is affecting him." When she brought him to the negotiations that day, Whisper refused to settle. He paced continuously, occasionally, freezing in place with his gaze fixed on empty corners of the chamber. "Your pet appears dysfunctional," War Chief Nexmore observed with obvious disdain. "Perhaps its primitive nervous system cannot adapt to space travel." Elena was about to respond when Station Administrator Jorax entered, his tentacled face displaying the Centaurian equivalent of distress. "Forgive the interruption," he burbled, "but I must inform all delegates that security protocols are being temporarily enhanced. We've had some maintenance issues." "What kind of issues?" Elena asked, noticing how Whisper's attention immediately fixed on Jorax. "Minor personnel matters. Nothing to concern our distinguished guests," Jorax replied too quickly. That evening, Elena accessed the station's public records terminal. 3 disappearances in the past month, all classified as desertions. All from lower maintenance levels. No bodies recovered. Computer, cross-reference similar incidents on Nexus Station over the past standard year. The results were disturbing. 27 disappearances, all categorized as desertions or transfers, all without witness accounts. She returned to her quarters. She found Whisper sitting alertly on her bed, something clutched in his mouth. He dropped it at her feet, a small translucent scale that seemed to absorb rather than reflect light. "Where did you find this?" she whispered, scanning it with her personal analyzer. "Unknown biological material. Composition: carbon-silicon hybrid. Structure with trace elements not in standard database." That night, Elena secured her quarters with additional locks and kept her sidearm within reach. Whisper didn't sleep at all, his eyes occasionally reflecting an unusual iridescence in the dim light as he maintained his vigil by the door. The diplomatic reception in the Krillian delegation's honor was in full swing when Elena noticed Whisper had disappeared. One moment he'd been under the refreshment table. The next, he was gone. Concerned, she excused herself from a conversation with minor trade officials and began searching. She found him in the service corridor, body tense, tail puffed 3 times its normal size. When she approached, he growled a sound she'd never heard from him before. Whisper? She whispered, reaching for him. The cat darted away, disappearing down a maintenance shaft, barely large enough for him to squeeze through. Without thinking, Elena followed, using her emergency override to access the restricted areas of the station. Level by level, she descended, following the occasional glimpse of black fur. The corridors grew darker, the air heavier with the scent of recycled oxygen and industrial lubricants. Warning signs indicated she had entered the station's lowest levels areas, designated for critical infrastructure. Only her communicator chimed. "Captain, where are you?" Kai's voice came through. "The war chief is retiring for the evening and requested a final word with you." "Tell him I'll speak with him tomorrow," she replied tersely. "I'm handling a situation." As she turned a corner, Elena froze. Ahead, illuminated only by emergency lighting, was a scene from nightmares. A creature like a living shadow, part insect, part reptile, with translucent scales that bent light around its form, was moving silently toward a maintenance hatch. The hatch that led directly to the diplomatic quarters. Her hand moved to her sidearm, but before she could draw, a streak of black fur shot past her. Whisper, transformed almost beyond recognition, launched himself at the creature. His eyes glowed with bioluminescent intensity, reflecting blue-green in the darkness. His claws, now extended far beyond normal feline proportions, sliced through the air with precision. The Shade Stalker turned, sensing the attack, but too late. Whisper's enhanced reflexes allowed him to twist mid-air, avoiding the creature's venomous barbs while raking molecular sharp claws across its sensory organs. The creature emitted a high-frequency shriek that made Elena's ears ring. It thrashed violently, trying to dislodge the cat from its back, but Whisper held fast. His teeth now sunk deep into what appeared to be a critical nerve cluster at the base of the creature's neck. With a final, desperate lunge, the Shade Stalker slammed itself against a bulkhead, then collapsed, its limbs twitching in death throes as Whisper leapt clear, landing soundlessly on all fours. When the creature stilled completely, the cat turned to Elena, his eyes slowly fading back to their normal yellow. He sat and began grooming himself. As if he hadn't just killed a predator 10 times his size. Morning found Elena in War Chief Dexmore's quarters, explaining what she'd witnessed. The massive Krillian listened in silence, his compound eyes fixed on Whisper, who sat calmly grooming himself on a nearby table. "And you say this ... Shade Stalker was heading for the diplomatic quarters?" Dexmore finally asked. "Directly toward your chambers, War Chief," Elena confirmed. "Station records indicate it's been responsible for at least 30 deaths. Administrator Jorax apparently considered it a manageable loss." Dexmore's mandibles clicked rapidly, not in mockery this time, but in the Krillian expression of deep thought. "Show me this creature's remains," he commanded. In the station's science lab, the Shade Stalker lay dissected, its biology revealing an apex predator evolved for perfect stealth and deadly efficiency. Dexmore circled the examination table, occasionally touching the creature's remains with a reverent appendage. "We have legends," he said finally, "of shadow deaths that come in sleep. Warriors found paralyzed and drained of life essence. I believe them tales to frighten larvae." He turned to Whisper, who had jumped onto the examination table to sniff curiously at the creature he had slain. "Your companion is no mere pet," Dexmore stated, his translator unable to fully convey the new respect in his tone. "It is a guardian, a warrior bred for a specific enemy. My grandmother told me stories," Elena admitted, "about cats being more than they appear. About an old colony that encountered something terrible and changed their cats to fight it. I never believed her." That afternoon, the trade negotiations concluded with surprising speed. The Krillians not only agreed to humanity's proposed tariff rates, but offered escort vessels for the first year of Operations Dot as they signed the final documents. Dexmore addressed Elena formally. Captain Vasquez, the Krillian Syndicate would consider it an honor if humans would discuss the possibility of providing guardian companions for our colony worlds. We too have shadows that need hunting. Word spread quickly throughout Nexus Station. The tiny Earth creature had slain a monster that station security couldn't even detect. Other species began approaching Elena with similar requests. Would Earth consider diplomatic exchanges of these guardian cats? That night, Elena sat in her quarters, Whisper purring on her lap as she scratched behind his ears. "You knew all along, didn't you?" she murmured. "Is that why you were so interested in the ventilation systems? Tracking it?" Whisper merely blinked slowly at her, the cat equivalent of a kiss, before closing his eyes in contentment. Her communicator chimed with a priority message from Earth Command. Diplomatic breakthrough with Krillians unexpected. Full report requested. Additional question. Several species suddenly requesting guardian cats. Please explain. Elena smiled, looking down at the ordinary-seeming black cat now sleeping peacefully on her lap. That, she said to herself, is going to be quite the report. As humanity's first permanent trade route through Krillian space became a reality, a new understanding spread through the galactic community. Humans didn't keep pets because they were sentimental. They kept them because some shadows could only be fought by guardians specifically evolved for the task. And sometimes the most effective guardian was the one no one suspected until it was too late. Asterisk